Hello everyone and welcome to yet another demonstration of using the NSX-T Terraform Provider to automate the deployment of this time a active Tier-0 gateway with a Tier-1 gateway attached and a free tier app topology where we have multiple segments with various distributed firewall rules. And we also add this time a local DHCP server to demonstrate that capability using NSX-T and Terraform. So the diagram we are going to create with Terraform, the topology we are going to create with Terraform looks like this. So on the NSX-T side in blue, we have the Tier-0 gateway. The Tier-0 gateway will have 4 uplinks, 2 of uplinks on each edge node. Configured on each edge node. Furthermore, we configure BGP with the local AS of 65005. We configure BGP neighbors for peering towards the top of racks. Obviously, we also configure the segments required to do so. And we attach a Tier-0 gateway onto which we have 3 segments connected for a typical free tier app. Each segment has a network attached and associated, and in case of a few of those segments, I'm demonstrating how to create a local DHCP server using NSX-T to automatically assign IP addresses to VMs connected to those segments. We configure redistribution and all those details, including some custom groups, custom distributed firewalls, and a custom service. So I'll share the code on the website and I'll also share it on GitHub. Let me move on to the code. So what I've done this time is I've increased enormously the use of variables. So there was always on my to-do list to do that a bit better. So in the main TF file, you mainly see references to the variables. So all the kinds of variables like passwords, usernames, transport zones, edge node names, edge cluster, and the Tier-0 configuration, including IP address information for the uplinks and IP information for the upstream routers and their associated AS numbers. Also including timers for BGP and segment details like names and CIDR IP addresses. On the main TF, this looks a bit similar like previous examples. We start with credentials, then we create some data sources we need for reference later, like transport zones, edge cluster, custom services, and the edge nodes. Then we create the required segments for peering, so VLAN 101, WAN 02. We further create a Tier-0 gateway in active, as shown here, where we also enable ECMP, configure a local AS number, referencing the variables, and enable inter-SR iBGP and multi-path relaxed. This part is the redistribution, and then we move on with creating uplink interfaces, first for edge node 1 and then for edge node 2. This is also cool because here we concatenate the uplink source IPs we need for a specific edge node to do the top of rack peering, as we have 2 uplinks per edge node. Continuing with BGP neighbor configuration, so towards router A and router B. And then we create and connect a Tier-1 gateway to the Tier-0. Also adding route advertisement rules, and this is the part where we create a DHCP server enabled on that edge cluster. This is the part where we then create overlay segments. This is similar like previous examples, but this is an example which is new, where we added a DCP version 4 configuration. So we create a local server on a different IP address than the gateway, which is required, on that segment with a specific lease time, and we point it to a DNS server in the lab. Same applies for the app segment. The app segment itself is on has the 172.168.0/24 CIDR configured, but we configured the server address on 254, whereas the gateway is on .1. Then the security groups being added and some policies being added with some specific rules based on the category, and a default deny for that section. Let's move on to NSX, because before we can start, we need at least edge nodes configured, as shown here. We need to have configured an edge cluster in which we make sure that the edge nodes are enabled and selected. In my case, I also have transport nodes configured. Obviously, you need transport zones. So basically, the whole fabric needs to be prepared. If we go to networking, you can see currently the environment is empty, with the exception of 2 segments which I created for connecting the edge node on my collapsed compute edge cluster using the same transport VLAN. So I'm using all NSX segments for connecting my edge nodes on top of my edge cluster. So let's try this. So in this directory, I have the main TF and the variable TF. So I can do now a Terraform apply. It's refreshing the state. So you now have the opportunity to review everything Terraform has is wanting to configure. This looks good. Enter yes, and it will move on with creating all the objects we've coded in Terraform. And it's done. It's extremely fast, which I like so much about Terraform. So moving back, let's review what's being done. So now you can see Tier-0 gateway being created. Obviously, it's still initializing, so that can take a few seconds. We have routing configured, we have BGP configured, AS number as specified, we've enabled ECMP into SR routing, multipath relax and such, configured route redistribution, which we can review as well. So advertising the Tier-1 subnets. Moving on to Tier-1 gateway, that's Tier-1 attached to the Tier-0. Also with route advertisement configured. So this is all clear. Then segments, so here you can see the number of segments being created. The VLAN 101 and 102 are for the peering, so to top of rack A and B. And then the 3 segments I've created for the 3-tier app. So let's just check the web segment. So here you can see it's configured with 172.168.10.1. And if you now check DHCP and no, sorry. Edit DHCP config, that is. Here you can see we now automatically configured a local DHCP server. So no DHCP relay or gateway, but a local DHCP server on this segment. We enabled it and we given it an IP address in the same CIDR range of that segment, but different than the gateway. That's mandatory. And then a DHCP range with a lease time, and you can add DNS servers to your liking. It also created a DHCP profile. This configuration looks similar for the other segments. So if we now move on to security, this is a lot similar like previous examples. In the example that we have a specific quote blue application with a number of firewall rules for that application, which allows specific services. And we also had configured a custom service in here as well, finishing a default deny for anything related to the security group of the blue application service. So this concludes the demo. I will share the current code on my blog website, but I also set up a GitHub repository with all the Terraform examples, so feel free to have a look there. The current demo is shown in the active folder under Terraform NSX-T repository, and here you can find the same examples in terms of Terraform code as I've shown just now. So feel free to have a look and to download it yourself and to try it yourself in your own lab. Remember to change the variables representing your lab, and then you should be good to go. I'm using Terraform 3.1 Provider, latest one being available, so that should work. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm here to help. So thank you very much for watching this video, and bye-bye.